Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. You got me, you got Nate. Nate, happy June. Coming into summer pretty soon. Time to start planting those summer crops. How's your
Yeah, about that shit.
how's it going? How's your little garden doing?
My garden fucking sucks, dude. The basil is just not handling. I think it gets too cold at night regardless, so it's like kind of withering. And I mean, it's staying alive, don't get me wrong, but it's just not thriving. Whereas the one that I've got in a plant potter that I bring inside at night is actually doing okay. But some folks in the neighborhood, I talked about this on the dad chat that we have as our bonus this week. Some of the folks in the neighborhood told me that basil and other Mediterranean herbs just don't do really well in England unless you have like a greenhouse or a hothouse or just some kind of a cover, or you grow them indoors. Because it just, even in summertime, it gets into the 50s at night. And, it's an herb that is supposed to be grown in the goddamn Mediterranean foothills and shit in bright sun. So, yeah, despite the fact that, I was up last night working and posting, of course. And I went to bed but couldn't fall asleep for a really long time. And, I got up to get some water and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning and the sun was coming up. So, we get a ton of sun here in the summertime. We're not even at the solstice yet. And we're already, sun's already coming up at fucking 4 in the morning. But this is not the kind of light that gives you a tan as a white person. It's the kind of light that gives you skin cancer as a white person. It's just different. It's just different. The plants that you deliberately plant don't seem to fucking grow very strongly, but weeds grow like goddamn jungle ferns, man. It's incredible.
And every time you describe living in England, just not even the political culture, but just the climate of England, I start to understand why everybody left the island to go conquer other places. Because who's living without basil these days? And you can't even fucking grow it there. You have to have put it somewhere special. Maybe you can grow it down in southern England, but I don't know.
I'm in southern England. I'm less than 50 miles from the coast. Yeah, man. London's close. Maybe in Cornwall or something like that, which gets hot in the summertime. But yeah, there's not really much further south to go from here. I mean, if I were to walk down to the train station and magically catch the train just on time, the Southeastern train from the train station near me, and take it to Brighton, which is absolutely on the southern coast, it's straight south from London to the English Channel, it'd take me about an hour to get there on the train, on a commuter train. We're not far from the coast.
Well, get on down to the beach and start planting basil. Maybe it'll be a little bit better down there.
Get on down to the beach and get on down to the beach and start spreading COVID like all the fucking British boomers are doing right now.
Do you guys have beaches? I assume that your beaches are just like rocks. Are there nice beaches there?
It's a big island. Yes.
I know that I know obviously that there's going to be water that's such, but look, you can have shitty beaches that are just rocks and stuff. Do you have nice beaches that you look?
Okay, nice is a qualified statement.
Right.
It's not like fucking Saint-Tropez down there. But if you look at some of the beaches in the Essex coast or further south into Kent, and then down I further, I don't know all the counties' names that well, but yeah, there's absolutely holiday beach places that are famous seaside resorts, like the English seaside resort, sandy beaches, having ice cream, that kind of stuff. That's a big thing. There are definitely some rocky beaches too, but there absolutely are destinations here, towns that, especially before the advent of cheap air travel, were really famous for being summer getaways because they have nice beaches and, vacation properties and stuff. And obviously English cities are pretty crowded.
Does England have a surf culture? Are there surfers there?
You're probably asking the wrong person, but I would guess that if you were going to surf, I just don't know where you'd do it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where the waves are.
From my understanding, yeah, I don't think you have the kind of waves in the Irish Sea or the English Channel. Maybe the North Sea, but even remember, these are it's not the ocean, so I'm really not sure. I also think the water is fucking cold. You might have. I'm pretty sure I've seen people doing stuff like parasailing, wakeboarding, things like that. But I don't know if it's the same. To be honest, most surf culture stuff kind of springs up around places that are pretty much warm. Like, think about the big surfing destinations. I mean, you have some headbangers who I respect to no end who go surfing, like hardcore surfing off the rocks in like Long Island in New York, but it's not like Diamond Head in Hawaii. You know what I mean?
Just learning about England. You've been there for so long. Now I've asked you all the big questions.
Almost 2 years, man.
Now I got to ask all the little questions, like what's it like to be a surfer in England? Of course, who fucking knows?
Who knows? Yeah, exactly. Surfers. And meanwhile, I get to look at America and watch a nationwide police riot of fucking unaccountable goons smashing heads because they saw a meme that made them sad.
It's pretty incredible here. In not good ways, mostly. Like, it's that when you say incredible, like it's the staring with disbelief at everything, but also being like, no, this is what I expected. I mean, we're recording this on June 2nd, so just so you know, by the time this comes out, what we have and haven't seen. It's early morning St. Louis time, June 2nd, Tuesday. So last night, we witnessed the latest in war crimes, which was using helicopter wash to get rid of protesters, which like isn't a war crime until you do it with your medevac helicopter, which is what they did. We've got, what else do we have? Matt Getz saying that that we should be hunted down like Taliban. And then we've got Tom Cotton, who is calling in both armor and airborne to do things in the military that are like completely useless in an urban environment, but calling in the 82nd Airborne and maybe the 3rd Infantry Division to take care of things. It's not good. Thankfully, the National Guard hasn't popped off too hard yet, but that's also a yet, and that's also not a they haven't popped off at all. Mentioned, I don't know if as you know, there's a death in Louisville, Kentucky, and no idea if that was cops or National Guard that did that. So, yeah, it's all weird and fucked at the moment.
The thing that I think is genuinely shocking, and that I hope is clarifying to people who are on the fence, is that there is no accountability whatsoever for American police. And not anywhere. It doesn't work. There just isn't any. People are going to point to the situation in Louisville where the cops deliberately turned their body cams off and then killed the guy. And to be honest, we're not sure at this point if the person who killed him was a police officer or National Guardsman. So you've got the state military, the state militia, and the police killing people in the street, completely unaccountable. Police unions running interference for them, making up bullshit, and a right-wing disinformation network called Facebook just pumping out boomer propaganda saying that Antifa are ISIS. And Minneapolis is a city controlled by all Democrats to the point where there's not even a single Democratic city councilor or city council member. You've got Minnesota, Democratic-controlled state. New York, Democratic-controlled state. New York City, long-time Democratic stronghold. Aside from Staten Island and I think a couple of areas of like deep Brooklyn and Queens, you don't have very many Republicans represented in city government. The mayor of New York City's daughter got doxxed by the NYPD. The same NYPD who were joking online about trying to kill her 6 years ago. What does he do? He comes out and defends them. He basically says, I'm sorry, racism is bad, but the cops should be allowed to murder whoever they want. That's not good enough. They then turn around and say the traitor Bill de Blasio, is a Marxist cop hater. He must be liquidated. Online, they say it openly. There's no accountability. Can't fire them. You can't get rid of them. You can't punish them. No jury will convict them. No prosecutor will put together a competent case to put them in fucking prison, even if they are charged, which they very rarely are. They get 6-figure salaries. They don't live in the city. They treat it like an occupying army. They get out. They do cop consulting. Basically, everything about the American state, all of the complete destruction of all of the American state, all of the ways in which we help people or build communities up since the fucking civil rights movement. Let's be perfectly clear with this. Since the civil rights movement, it's all gone. It's all been fucking defunded so that we can have more cops who dress like RoboCop and murder anyone, and they get away with it. And then they want you to feel sad, and they post their fucking ooh cop memes about, you don't know how hard it is. It's like, I don't want to know how fucking hard it is. Fuck you. I mean, we did cop shit in our own way when we were deployed. And no one should feel fucking sympathy for us for what we did to say, oh, you don't know how hard the job was. It's like we joined voluntarily and we saw it with our own eyes. So you can either be honest about that and say, yeah, maybe what I did had no purpose besides to oppress people, and I should feel bad about that, and I should reflect on that. Or you just stay a cop and have a cop in your brain telling you, no, actually, I'm the victim. You don't understand what it's like. And so in a way, being a veteran, being former military, I have so much less sympathy and so much less bandwidth for stupid cop bullshit than I think a civilian might. Let's clarify, a white civilian from the suburbs might, which obviously I am, because so much of this narrative around how the thin blue line and how hard cops have it it's complete fucking bullshit. And I hope people are learning that. I hope people are seeing that. But I'm saying, as someone who walked patrols in Afghanistan, did air assaults in Afghanistan, did the shit that I fucking regret, not that we did things that I personally did things in a brutal way when it came to stuff involving Afghan civilians, but it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter if I was nice and tried to speak Pashto. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. We're still occupying their country. We're still controlling their lives. We're still holding them at gunpoint. And I look at that and I say, from that experience, I understand now that what the state does versus what the state tells people it's doing, there's such a wide gulf. And I hope that people listening to me can understand that I'm not proud of that. I don't have any war crimes to confess to, but just being there was bad. Just being in that position was bad. Just being a part of it was a bad thing. And what cops are doing, in my opinion, is absolutely no different, with one fucking exception. And that is, I think pound for pound, more American servicemen have gone to prison for murder, statistically speaking, adjusted for population size, than cops in America. Flat out. That's the only difference. What we did downrange is no different than what cops are doing in America. And honestly, at this point, if you watch the fact that the military police, guard units that have been activated as logistical support, they are meshing in perfectly. They're folding right into the cop organization to become a bigger police force, doing the same shit the cops do, being aggressive, murdering people, beating people, refusing to allow people to protest, refusing people even basic human decency.
Instigating and
instigating it.
Most, kettling people and then saying, hey, curfew's in 15 minutes. And, then coming across peaceful protests and shooting tear gas, attacking journalists. I mean, this is when you open up a history book and you read these things happening, those are happening to a totalitarian regime somewhere, where people are protesting and throwing down barricades outside of the presidential, palisade or whatever. That's literally where we're at. And I'm not surprised by anybody who hates the military. And if you want to hate me, that's fine. I'm a man. I can take it. Watching all of this happen and just watching people either harden their mental, become more right wing to do the more, if you can fold your arms even harder and glare even harder and bob haircut yourself even harder to just say, well, you shouldn't have been looting, you shouldn't have been doing this, you shouldn't have been doing that. But I really feel like I see a lot more people who have always just been kind of, well, I mean, I don't agree with the protests, the riots are bad, coming around to what the fuck? Of course people are going to throw a brick at your head. What are you doing? Why are you rolling up on people and just shooting them point blank with rubber bullets? You shouldn't do that. So I see more and more people, who were fence sitters, either I see them picking a side, and that's not good. I mean, it is good. You should be picking our side, obviously, but it's the divisions that we're seeing are going to come to a head, because like there's no turning around on this. There's no like, in 2 years, like, hey, QAnon guy, wasn't it crazy how things were last 2 years ago? Like, yeah, it sure was. Antifa guy, anyway, let's go have a beer. Like, we're never getting back to that. Like, everybody's too hardlined into whatever side they're going to be on. So this I don't know, this doesn't stop here. Even if the riots stop, even if somehow they are quelled, this doesn't stop at this point. And I don't know where it goes. I don't know. Like, this is one of those, like, this is the moment in the Wikipedia article, the paragraph where there's a lot of flags and citations before you get to the really interesting part.
I guess the thing for me is more that this is a situation in which people have to pick sides, and you have to declare what side you're on, and you have to be willing to not center yourself on, in the sense of being like, oh, well, let me talk about how I've had my personal journey when it comes to talking about police violence. Like, if you're like me, you're white, and in my case, I've had the police harass me, but nothing serious, nothing anywhere close to, for example, some of the stories that Cynthia's told me about what was just a normal day growing up where she's from. That there's just no comparison. But I mean, obviously, I distrust the police because I've seen the way they behave and when they think they can get away with shit, and that's before you factor in any of the stuff that's happened that's we've witnessed in the past decade since Oscar Grant was killed in 2009, going all the way to Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Philando Castile. I don't even have all the names on the top of my head. I don't have them in front of me, and it's just you wind up unable to remember all of it unless you give it special attention, because there's so many cases of it. And so I don't think that it's a good idea for people like myself who have obviously complaints about the police to center it and say, well, let me tell you my story about police brutality. Because unless you've really experienced it, you're probably centering yourself. But you have to pick a side. And the easiest way to pick a side, in my opinion, is to be on the side of the people who want accountability, who want the police defunded, who want the police unable to do the shit that you are watching them do right now. Yeah. And I don't know what else it's going to take for people to look at this and say, either you're on the side of basically a robot army being allowed to murder anyone they want, and you have to twist yourself into goddamn novelty overly twisted pretzels to justify it, or you're on the side of people who say, I do not want an occupying army to be judge, jury, and executioner anywhere in the world, to include American cities where they are acting the exact same as an occupying army, but more mask off, I suppose. More. When I was in the army, there were a lot of people who would bitch and complain about how the rules of engagement with counterinsurgency wouldn't let them go gloves off. They wanted to murder people. They wanted to kill civilians. They wanted to harm people. They wanted to do retribution. They would glow when telling stories about people who did do stuff like that. And anybody who's been in the military, who's been in a combat arms unit, knows that maybe these stories are made up. Probably some are, probably most aren't. That, you'll have these stories about, we did X, Y, and Z. You look at Ray Odierno, former chief of staff of the Army, when he was the commander of 1st Armor, I believe, or 1st Infantry. I can't remember which division. They took over at the end of 2003 in Iraq, and he decided to go full martial law. Kids threw rocks at tanks. They would beat the kids up, throw rocks back at them. Kids threw stuff from houses. They would bulldoze the houses. People got caught after curfew. They'd rough them up and just not just arrest them, they'd abuse them. In one case, a platoon leader made the decision to take 2 guys who had been caught after curfew and throw them off a bridge into a river, and one of them drowned. And of course, that platoon leader got nuked for it. The battalion commander got nuked for it, but none of them went to prison for any significant amount of time, if at all. I'm pretty sure the platoon leader and the battalion commander got relieved, but they didn't actually go to prison for it. So, fuck crocodile tears, their military careers got ruined for war crimes, but they didn't actually really physically suffer for it. And you hear stories about that. You'd hear people talk about, oh, gloves off, mask off, you know. Mask off wasn't really the expression, but gloves off definitely was. And if their chain of command had told them do war crimes, they would have. If their chain of command had said, you know, abuse these people, abuse civilians, you know, get the information you want by targeting their kids, you know, they'd do it. And everybody's who's been around the block at least once probably knows you'll have people who step in and say, you know, don't do this. But that doesn't matter. Because the chain of command, if they're on the side of doing war crimes, then you're fucked. And even if they're tacitly on the side of not doing war crimes, they want to keep their name off the bad list when it comes to their superiors, and they want to downplay any incident that happens. Which obviously gives rise to me and Francis's point that we've made numerous times, which is if somebody's trying to sell you on a claim of this soldier got sentenced to prison time for murdering a civilian and he was unjustly convicted, he did it. 100% he did it.
100%.
Because there is no fucking way that the military will send you to actual prison for war crimes, for murder, downrange, if you didn't do it. Because they will seek every avenue that they possibly can to exonerate you and to exonerate themselves. To say it was an accident, it was unintentional, you didn't know it was loaded, whatever the case. It doesn't matter. They will go out of it. You have to, in cold blood, deliberately murder someone for no reason whatsoever who was doing, literally there was no possible threatening justification, and enough people in your unit have to have the fucking balls.
They have to have
say
been
something.
Disgusted enough by your
disgusted
actions.
enough by it, or you just happen to have done it in a public enough arena that there's no denying that it happened. There's footage of it, etc. Otherwise, they will do everything they can to get you off. So even given that environment, there are people who still want to go mask off. There's still people who say we need to take the gloves off. We need to do war crimes. We need to do no quarter, like fucking Tom Cotton is saying. And so when I see the cops now in America, I see that mentality completely unchecked. That same mentality that we encountered in the military that disgusted me to the point where I quit is there. And now I feel like with this sort of Blue Lives Matter cops shit is becoming more and more, not just the norm, but actively encouraged. And now you have American politicians encouraging it. And now you have the Guard being activated. You have active duty units being activated. And there have been reports that the Quick Reaction Force from the 82nd has been activated, that there's JSOC elements on standby at Fort Bragg who are getting ready to get activated. You know, you've got the military. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if your brother who's a Marine, or your dad who was a lieutenant colonel, or your mom who was a sergeant major, or whatever, says, no, this is bad, the military wouldn't do this. There are enough people in the military who either want to do it or will do it if they're ordered to, regardless. That's just a fact. And I don't think there's anybody out there who spent a day in uniform, certainly a day in combat, who hasn't encountered people who have said things like, if it was up to me, we'd just kill all of them.
Oh yeah.
100%. 100%.
That's perfectly normal opinion to have.
And that's not a thing that really gets challenged. You might have, the odd, squad leader, platoon leader, whomever say, hey man, that's fucked up. You shouldn't say that, and give someone a lecture. But 100%, that is such a common attitude. And it's the thing about it is that a lot of folks might listen to this. A lot of the people who aren't necessarily as just completely radicalized about this as we are will look at this and say, oh no, that's not true. I know somebody, or, I wouldn't stand for that, or I'm a commander and I wouldn't let, but it doesn't matter. The reason why I say it doesn't matter is because there's a whole lot of fucking military units out there, and you might be in charge of one. You might be in charge of all of them. It doesn't matter. You're not every private. You're not every specialist. You're not every squad leader. You're not every team leader. There's going to be at least one of them who has a chance and who's going to do it. You put soldiers with live ammo in America, in places they're not from, telling them that everyone's the enemy, in a climate where you have only to open up Facebook and within 3 fucking seconds, it's going to start suggesting white nationalist shit to you. You have this entire narrative of Antifa thugs and looting. You cannot tell me it will not happen, because it's already happening. It's already happening. You look at what happened in fucking Louisville. National Guard did not de-escalate that situation. They were there for the cops to murder an unarmed guy. So the point I'm trying to make here is all of the dissembling and woe is me justifications that you're going to see from people in uniform or veterans about, this isn't us, we're better than this.
We're not at all.
We're not.
We're not.
And the thing
only
about it
people
is that
saying that are people who,
even if you personally would never, and even if you would do everything in your power to stop your troops from doing it, you can't control all of them at all the time, and you are not every fucking commander. And lots of them don't give a shit. Lots of them are lazy enough they just don't want to rock the boat, and many others are actively sympathize with this stuff. They have that inside the wire, outside the wire mentality. They see everyone who's not in uniform as the enemy. And in a situation like this, where it's confrontational, where it's unclear, they're gonna fucking do the same shit the cops do. And they're supporting the cops, and look at what the cops are doing now. So you cannot tell me that the military is gonna save us. I've heard the same fucking shit every month, it seems, since 2016, that the institutions are gonna save us, that the generals are gonna save us, that the fucking courts are gonna save us, that, the leadership's gonna save us, that NGOs and, activism is gonna save us. And you know what? You are not going to be able to just sit back and let the good people do their job and win here. I see the way this is going from afar, and I'm telling you, the military will not save you. Unless the military parody redacts Donald Trump in Minecraft, which they won't, they will not save you. And honestly, even if they did, just fucking hypothetically speaking, there is no way you could tell me that it would be better.
No.
That they wouldn't be, A, that they would do better, and B, that fucking the white nationalist paramilitaries you're already seeing springing up with the endorsement of the president wouldn't go full on crazy. So please let me tell you, anyone who thinks, at this point the military has to do a coup, shut the fuck up. They cannot, they will not. For one, because they ideologically are not that different from what Donald Trump wants to do. For another, because there's no one willing to do that. For another, because I think anybody who even would consider it from the perspective like where we're coming from understands that that would create a situation far, far worse than what even is currently happening. So the only thing that's going to stop us, the only thing that's going to stop this is people in the street out there fucking confronting this. And I don't give a fuck what your Meemaw thinks. Fuck your Meemaw. And if you are too hung up on, decency and respectability and like, but some people broke a Starbucks window, you're also part of the problem. And I realize that I am saying this from England, and it's very easy for me to say this from a foreign country. It's a question that I ask myself every fucking day. What can I be doing? What should I be doing? I'm almost 36 years old. I'm not in great shape. I don't know what the fuck I should be doing. I ask myself that same question. But if you don't support the people who are in the street right now, you are part of the problem. Flat out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my wife and I had that conversation too about, what can you do? What do you do? And, there's still COVID happening, and I can already, I can see how the police are treating this. And if it's too dangerous for you to be in the streets, which I fully understand, there's plenty of bail funds. And also look to your local stuff. We donate to Arch City Defenders, who have been around for a long time. They do pro bono lawyering for protesters in St. Louis. There's all kinds of local stuff you can be doing. There's all kinds of things. There's different ways you can help that's not, being necessarily a body in the street, but also, you have to be vocal about it. Like, the time for saying I don't pay attention to politics is over, because politics is at your front door with a battering ram. And it's going to come in, and you're going to have to either, fight it back, or you're going to have to kiss the ring. Whichever one you want to do, you're going to have to do it, though, because this fence-sitting bullshit's just not going to work. I'm heartened by the fact that I see a lot of people and a lot of military people say, be horrified by these things. But, it's the next push, though, has to be, look, I cannot be a part of this situation anymore. I can't do this. Like watching the military use rotor wash to disperse a crowd is horrifying to me. Like those dudes were like, you've ridden on a helicopter. Rotor wash, you got to get pretty low for it to really be effective, for it to really suck. And so like that thing could have fucking hit anything and gone, falling out of the air and started and killed people. But also, again, it's just like, if you want people to stop throwing a brick at your head, stop giving them a reason to. It's that fucking simple. And like, and read a history book. Authoritarian regimes do not work out for anybody. Like it's never, and I don't understand watching this happen and being like, oh, okay, so I see parallels between, this and, it's trite to say Nazi journalism, or Nazi Germany, Italian fascism, or just your run of the mill, right wing death squad kind of stuff. It's insane to watch these things happen and have anybody be like, no, this is the correct way to go. And it's that weird bootlicker mentality. So, if you can't be out in the streets, you need to, and tweets are great, everybody. We all love our posting, but there does have to be something else to it. There has to be, if you got money, you should be giving money. If you've got, resources to help in other ways, that's what you do. Like, not everybody, even in the army, not every soldier is really a soldier. Some people are logistics. So have that mentality of like, if I'm not willing to go, and even like in the middle of the day, like I understand not wanting to be down there, one, because of COVID, and two, because, God knows when the police are just going to be like, all right, time to start tear gassing people. But there's other ways that you can do it, and you can find those things in your neighborhood and in your local areas to help people out. Because I mean, it's if you don't, what the other side is doing? They're getting bats and they're marching with the cops and they're marching with the military, and they're like, oh, we're going to help you guys restore order, and the cops are going to be like, yeah, okay. I mean, that just makes things easier for us. So
let me ask you a question,
yeah,
Francis, and this can obviously get cut if you don't want to have it in, but what would you do if you came down orders to get activated for something? I mean, because you're in the process of retiring, but still.
Sure.
Like, have you thought about that?
I have. And I mean, honestly, at this point, I would probably just laugh at it. Like, I'm not National Guard. There is no me getting activated for this. So I'm not like, it's easy for me to say it because I know I have the privilege of nobody is calling up my PAO ass to go stand on a line with a rifle. So there is a level of privilege there to acknowledge that, but absolutely not. Like there's no way that I feel like I would be able to stand, like even a like, oh, maybe I can, keep things quiet, or maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. Like I would be becoming like literally what every tanky, screams at me that I am. So, there's that. But I just like the idea of standing with a rifle, with the intent, with the knowledge that I might, have to use it. And the thing is that like when somebody says I have to use, when they say I have to shoot somebody, you don't. And this isn't a, I could just lay down my arms and get beaten to death by protesters. It is you don't have to show up there with a gun at all. Like, you don't have to do these things because you don't have to be there. And so once you are there, once you put you're committing yourself to either, if things go south, either I need to gun down innocent civilians, or I need to gun down unarmed civilians, or I need to just kind of let myself get washed over and possibly killed myself. Like those are going to be the moral quandaries that you have as soon as you step on that line. And those are two options which do not work for me. Like I don't see this ending well. I don't see this ending peacefully and everybody goes home and everybody's happy with some piece of legislation that comes out. There is no legislation coming. The right-wingers are just going to throw more cops at the situation, and the Democrats are going to post on Twitter like, oh, this is dangerous, this is wrong, we can't have this, and not actually do a fucking thing. Not put their own bodies on the line, not put their own selves up there to do anything. So the only thing that it comes down to at this point is the the choice of the individual. And it is the choice of the individual to go. Do you want to go to these protests that invariably turn into riots? Whether because of the people in the protests getting justifiably being angry, or the cops also just as much instigating on their own.
And I would say that in all the stuff that I've seen recently, and all the reporting that I've seen recently, it's been peaceful until the cops provoked it. Like, the cops got aggressive and started beating people's asses and tear gassing them, and then it got violent, understandably. I have not yet seen a situation in which, I mean, maybe there's been one. Maybe some idiot glowing eyes avatar person can point me to something where a peaceful protest was made violent because of the protesters, in the last couple of days.
Well,
I haven't seen it.
And I do want to say that, like, you and I, we live, we post in a bubble. So the only stuff that I see are the things that people who agree with me are angry about. Now, but the same thing at the same time is, if you showed me a million videos of, like, look at these rioters, without provocation are burning down a Wells Fargo, I'm just like, that's also not exactly going to affect me. Like, oh, well, you're right. They sure are bad too. It's like, no, fuck that Wells Fargo. I don't give a fuck about that. Like, people are rioting not because of, like, some sort of outside there's protests happening in 140 cities. Like, I don't know where this outside instigator thing comes from, like, as if there's some sort of timeshare or something that everybody has to rotate to a different city to protest there. Like, it's people in their own cities that are fucking shit up. And you know what, maybe there are instigators. Probably. Some of them are probably the cops that are instigating. Like, who fucking knows? We're never going to have this, sorted out and straightened. But what it comes down to is, once again, like the situation of me being on a line, facing down protesters. You don't have to be there. You don't have to do that. You can refuse those orders. Like, you're probably not gonna go to, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know your command. I don't know the National Guard. You're not gonna get locked up for 20 years for it. And, like, honestly, the idea of having to do anything, like, of somebody giving me an order to shoot people, like, when you're in the army in Iraq and Afghanistan, you feel like, okay, well, you buy into a large amount of the bullshit that gets shoveled into you. Like, the reason why it's so easy to do this is because, the racism and the dehumanization of Iraq and Afghan people is just kind of ingrained into the military. Now, the dehumanization of your fellow Americans really isn't. So I have fingers crossed that the National Guard might not be as insane and crazy as the police departments, who, as you said, a lot of times view it as that they're an occupying force, because they don't even live in the places. St. Louis, at least St. Louis City cops have to live in St. Louis City, and that's been a constant fight of, no, you will live here if you are going to police here. But yeah, what it just comes down to is, I don't want to be in those situations, and I hope other people don't want to put themselves into those situations. And I know that there is a very good chance that, it's, when you're in the military, you want to believe that, like, maybe you're going to be the one to save it. And, like, let me tell you something. I've been in the Army for 20 years. I've been doing this for a long time. Yes, as a reservist, but I spent a lot of time doing active duty stuff and around active duty people. It is not going to get better. It's just not. Like, most of the soldiers, it's not going to be difficult to say, hey, remember when we were in Afghanistan and those kids were throwing rocks at us? This is just like that. And remember what we did then? It's just like that. And so it's not going to be a hard turn. Maybe you're going to have some good apples and good eggs in there, but, like, really the only good way to deal with this is to say no. Is to say, I'm not going to go do it. Obviously, it, as we said, it comes down to everybody. If you're going to be, activated, but you're a typist or something, I don't know. Fucking, it comes down to your own morality. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Personally, what I would do, absolutely not. I would not go hold a rifle or a camera for the military in a situation like this, because there's no selling this as a net good for the Army.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I didn't want to run from the obvious elephant in the room. I mean, I know the situation, obviously, that you're a reservist. You're in the process, literally, of your retirement paperwork is going through. You have 20 years in service. That the likelihood of the reserves getting activated, of your reserve unit getting activated, and you being in that situation is incredibly low. But obviously, that's a thing that people are going to wonder. That here you are, you're not out of line as a reservist because you literally can do anything you want, unless you're like fucking robbing banks and shit, as on your civilian time, and still be a reservist. So nothing is stopping you from being a leftist podcaster. But there's also the fact that you're still in the military, even though you're on the way out, and you're literally like just waiting on them to process your paperwork. And so I hoped that would be your answer. You know what I mean? Because it's a question that I asked myself. Did I do enough to combat the dumb shit? Like, am I responsible in some way for, having tried to be the sort of respectable veteran and talk about this in terms of, the military wouldn't do this, 6 years ago? Because I did. I wrote a piece years ago basically saying that the police conduct in Ferguson shocked me, and that this was the kind of stuff that we absolutely would never in a million years have done, that we were specifically forbidden from doing, we were trained to not do. And I couldn't understand why they were doing it. Like, to me, it struck me as, like fucking Blackwater, like mercenaries, the way the cops were acting.
Oh yeah. And that's and
I was wrong, because I think that there are plenty of people who've since shared their experiences that 100% they did shit like this in Iraq and Afghanistan. Just because I didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And for another, I lost a ton of friends because of that article, because they were fucking guys I served with who became cops, and being a cop is being in a cult. And so to them, I was a traitor who was anti-cop, because I was saying, hey guys, the same shit that you and I talked about in combat, our incredible frustration with these stupid fucking guard units who are sloppy as hell, abusing civilians, shooting shit off randomly, like just completely terribly fucking run. You and I, we all had conversations saying these guys shouldn't be here. They're disgusting. Like, they can't fucking do their jobs. Like, they need to get their shit under control. Like, we're not here to fucking do war crimes. And now you guys have just turned around and become cops, and all of a sudden, all war crimes are fine.
Well, it's not a war crime. I think it's not a war crime when it's at home. Like, that's what it comes down to. Is I'm protecting the Wells Fargo from these horrible looters, and it's just a switch in that mentality. And the thing is, they have now become that sloppy National Guard unit. But it's okay. It's okay when we do it. So yeah, I mean, fuck them. It's all. I will. Like I said, I'm very privileged that I will not have to, that it's very unlikely that I will have to make that decision. If I end up having to make that decision, we've already gone very far down a rabbit hole. If they're trying to get my retired broken ass onto a line in St. Louis or in Ferguson, it's not going to happen. But for those of you who are wondering, for those of you who are in the National Guard, you can only do what you're going to do. I can't tell you what to do, but you have to think about the history of things. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously not some chud-brained right-winger, where we go one, where we go all motherfucker. Like, you have some sort of moral compass that is probably screaming at you right now. And, I know there's a lot of people who are just duck down, trying to wait their contract out. That's what I'm doing. I know a couple of other reservists who do it. I know people in the active duty who do it. They're just like, I'm doing my last year and a half. That's what I tell people. Like, when people ask me, I'm in the Army, but I don't want to be here anymore. It's like, look, just keep your head down. Do what you need to do to get out. Because, as we say, you can't just quit the Army. You're under a contract usually, especially the younger soldiers. But if you're wondering, if you're questioning yourself, and if you're worried about orders coming down, the only thing that I can tell you is you got to you got to follow your own moral compass. Like, that's the only thing. Nobody can tell you what to do. Don't come to me and ask me, because you know what I'm going to tell you. But what matters is what you're going to tell you. So worry more about that. Yeah, and I guess I look at it too that. What I'm hoping to do is, by the time this episode comes out, I'm going to try to make a thread. I'll turn off tweet deleting and make a thread and get people to recommend
bail funds and legal defense funds that we can link to, and I'm going to donate to them. And what I'm going to try to do is, we've had a little bit of growth on our Patreon, and I want to start setting aside the money that's from growth that I can give out each month, and I can match people's donations, and just try to encourage everybody who can give, because like we said before, you've got to do something. You've got to take a stand here, and not everybody can be in the streets, and not everybody can risk all the consequences that come from it. The physical consequences, the mental and emotional consequences, the financial consequences, losing your job, losing your apartment, losing your kids, getting a criminal record, all these things. Like there's lots of risk you have to factor into it. So my take is, either be on the streets or help the people who are. And I want to do that too. And obviously, I mean, Francis, like, we've been doing this for almost 4 years. I love you, but if you went in and they called you up, we'd have to stop the show.
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't do the show anymore. Well, because that would defeat the entire fucking purpose of what we've been doing for 4 fucking years.
I'm glad I passed the test. But yeah, no, that's
you know what I mean, man. Like, it's just
no.
And here's the thing: is that I understand that there's like the financial constraints. I understand that there's the risk. I understand that when you've put 20 fucking years in the military and you would be in a position you'd probably be throwing away your pension. Like, it's a lot of shit. It's a decision to make. But I mean, regardless of the decision that you made, I would try to empathize, but there's no way in fucking hell we could keep doing the show. There's just no way.
No, and I mean, personally, like my own morality, there's no way that I could, consciously keep doing it. Like, who would keep listening to us? Who would, like, I'm sure that there would be people who'd be like, no, I mean, I understand you had to do what you had to do, but like, again, standing on a line facing down protesters with a rifle is no. There's absolutely no way. There is no excuse that I would have personally. I would have for that. There are a lot of excuses that I make for myself to do things. Like I said, I don't go to the protests because of various things. And you know what? You want to call me a little bitch for that? Perfectly understand. I've been to protests. I see what's happening at these protests, and they are ones that my 37-year-old father and husband, and still does have a job, and teeters on a paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. That's not a risk that I can take. But also at the same time, there is certainly a limit. While you can't necessarily drag me to a riot to be on the protester side, you're absolutely not going to drag me to one to be on the opposition forces. So no, I'm glad that you do ask, because I do want to, I would want that to be put out there. Like, it is a dangerous time, and there's a chance that something like this, that I would openly talk about how I would refuse orders, it's not really a danger to me. I'm a reservist. I'm not in uniform right now, so I can say whatever the hell I want. But if I was a career-minded individual, that might hurt me in the long run. But I'm not a career-minded individual. I don't give a fuck. I'm getting out. So I'm getting out. I have a contract with a hard end date, and once that happens, I can do the real activism that I've been hesitant to do, because of the military, because I'm worried about things getting back to the army and that affecting that career. So yep, that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I'm glad we're on the same page, and I feel like it's a thing that people are going to ask. People who listen to the show are going to wonder, and it's just a thing that I'm glad we see eye to eye on that. And so I do think that we're going to share stuff. I'm going to link to my own Twitter feed to try to get things that people can donate to and stuff that I'll match, and I'll try to make this not just a one-time thing, but just make it a regular occurrence. And obviously, we really deeply appreciate the support from all of the fans and subscribers, because that puts me in a situation to have the income to be able to do things like this. So, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for you.
Yeah,
and I greatly appreciate that.
And by the time this show comes out, the store is going to be updated, and a lot of the stuff that's going into the store, the proceeds are going to go to different charities. So if you're on, not only are we giving Patreon money, that for our Patreons are so we're very grateful for giving to us, but also the store does fairly well, and I have a lot of new stuff. Once the care packages are going to go out today, and once those care packages are all buttoned up and ready to go, the store is going to be updated, and yeah, we're going to be donating a lot of that stuff. So what we as we said, everybody do what you can, where you can, and how you can. I've been very blessed to keep a job right now. My wife still has a little bit of income, and we have the Patreon, so I'm not hurting in ways that a lot of other people are. So this is how we try to give back to the people who are hurting. Does that sound trite?
Absolutely.
I don't know if that sounds.
No, it
Okay.
doesn't. It doesn't, man. I mean, everybody's got to do whatever they can. I think the big thing is, ideologically speaking, you've got to pick a side. There's no way to wait this out. There's no way to just let the chips fall where they may. So either pick a side or resign yourself to
The fascism that you're opening the door for, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And so in a way, it feels hilariously inappropriate to even link to bonus content. So I don't know if I want to do it this week. We do have a new bonus episode out this week on Patreon. That's just us doing a dad chat.
If you want something a little more lighthearted, a little more lighthearted,
yeah. And that's the $1 tier too. So it's content for people who don't really want to spend a ton of money on Patreon. So that's available. I would also just say it's an evolving situation, and obviously, I'm certainly emotional about it, but I have seen a lot of incredible solidarity too, and so I don't want to leave that unremarked. I wish I could do more. I hope that if you connect with this show in any meaningful way, or you have at any point during the time we've been doing it, that you listen to the sincerity that we're trying to put forth here and just say, look, you might not be able to be out there, but you can do something. And that something can make a huge difference. And I want to point this out too. A lot of folks give money. A lot of folks get excited. A lot of folks see things and it goes viral when it comes to stuff in the moment. But those rebuilding, the rebuilding of these communities after riots happen, the legal defense, the ongoing legal costs for people who've been charged with bullshit charges, the medical bills for protesters who get hurt, and the cops are intentionally wounding people and putting people's fucking eyes out. You think about what those medical costs are going to be, not just in emergency medicine, but then in the long-term care and the lost work and all the stuff that goes into it. And so I would say, I hope that if you've connected with this show in any meaningful way, that you find a way to support people and you find a way to make that support permanent. Because that's the only way it's ever going to stop. That's the only way it's ever going to we're even going to have any kind of forward progress in beating back this shit. Like, the fact of the matter is, the cops run America with no accountability. That's really what it is. The cops can do whatever they want, and they've decided that speaking out against them is a crime, and they're going to make you feel it, physically, financially, and just in terms of your own freedom. So we've got to stop it. Or it's going to stop us, or it's going to eventually be the thing that everyone's, made their smug dystopian fiction about. It's going to happen in real life. I believe that with all my heart, and we've got to stop it. And the only way you can stop it is by organizing with people around you or people who are doing the stuff on the ground. And I hope that, if you've listened to me and thought I had an authority on anything ever, that you listen to me now, because I believe it 100%. And I don't really spend a lot of my time getting spun up about stuff if I don't think it's serious. So that's all I got.
All right. As always, we mentioned the Patreon. We got a lot of bonus content there. Patreon.com/hellofaway-to-die. And you can also get us on Twitter. I'm at Army Strang. Nate is at In These Deserts. We have the shop. We have writings at hellofawaytodie.com. We're all over the place. So, if there's any questions, any concerns, you can always reach out to us. You can always DM us. You can always send an email to sergeantjoker@hellofawaytodie.com. Nate and I both check that email address. So, feel free. It's a weird time, and I know that we have a lot of military people, and if you're not part of a if you're feeling alone and kind of underrepresented or unrepresented or whatever, we are here and we're not going away. And there's a lot of other people, there's a lot of other troops, and a lot of other soldiers who also think this is really fucked and wouldn't go stand on those lines. So, for whatever courage it is for me to sit here and say, big words, hopefully that means something for other people as well. So, as always, Nate, we'll talk to you next week.